Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. Your host, Travis and John. I accidentally said that at the beginning of this interview,
Did
too.
you?
Yeah.
That's all right.
Should have just jumped straight into it. John, who do we have today?
Josh McKinney. I got to tell you, that was a good one.
Yeah.
I hope nobody listens to it because I want to try out a few things he said before everyone hears it, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah. Today we had Josh McKinney, from I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu podcast, a big avid competitor, been training Jiu-Jitsu for 15 years, started when he was 14 years old. And like John said, this conversation was just so good, man. There's like so much like nuggets in there that, you could just implement right now into your game. We talk about like designated winner, which is, a kind of a newer mindset of how to train instead of doing, rigid techniques, A, B, C, D techniques. And Josh is just full of knowledge, man, for training for so long, especially starting at 14. He's got an interesting perspective on jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, and I think some of the tips he gives out in here on some ways to maybe improve your guard retention and whatnot. Like, even though he said it and it sounded simple, I was like, man, I never thought of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm ready to go try it.
There's a couple moments in the interview where we literally stop because I'm like, bro, I have never freaking thought of that.
Yeah, same.
So hopefully you guys enjoy the episode and enjoy our conversation with Josh. It's another great one. And if you guys want to go follow him, everything's going to be down in the description below, all of his Instagrams and website and whatnot. And go check out his I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu podcast. It's another phenomenal one. So, but yeah, I don't really have anything. Hit us up on Instagram. Let us know what you guys think. Follow us, Elbows Tight, everywhere. And yeah, that's pretty much it. John, you got anything else?
Nope, that's it. Give it a listen. Let us know.
All right, guys. Thanks for listening and watching at home. We'll catch you later. Peace.
Are you tired of waking up tired? Well, your pillow probably sucks, but it doesn't have to. I'd like to introduce you to Mummy, a bedding brand that is revolutionizing the sleep game with their innovative 6-chamber pillow. Their patented 6-chamber design secures the filling in place so their pillow never becomes lopsided or loses support. It also features a breathable mesh to keep you cool throughout the night.
A better and more productive you starts with a better sleep. Go to mummy.com and use code ElbowsTight for 15% off and free shipping. That's mvmisleep.com and use code ElbowsTight for 15% off and free shipping. With free shipping and free returns, there's no reasons not to try it.
Let me give you some experience with the pillow. So for one, I've had a pillow that I've been using for 20 years. I know it sounds disgusting, but my entire household fights over my pillow. So we got this Mummy pillow in, and I got to tell you, I love it. It's cool for one, and that's a big issue for me. I hate a hot pillow.
Yep.
Like you'd wake up throughout the night and you're flipping the thing. I love this pillow. I love the support. And, I don't get much sleep with jiu-jitsu being late and work. So I really appreciate anything I can get my hands on that's going to improve my sleep quality.
Also, it doesn't feel like when I put my head down on the pillow, I'm getting caught up in a rear naked choke with the pillow just surrounding my head and whatnot. It's literally the most comfortable pillow I've ever used. I absolutely love it, and I could not recommend it more. Sleep is the most important part of your recovery from jiu-jitsu, and with Mummy, they definitely have stepped my sleep game up quite a bit.
With free shipping and free returns, there's no reason to not try it out. Get 15% off your order at mvmisleep.com when you use code ElbowsTight. That's 15% off when you use code ElbowsTight. Sleep ambitiously with Mummy.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Elbows Tight Podcast. Your host, Travis and John. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. I don't want to go shovel my driveway. If people are wondering why I'm wearing a jacket and a sweatshirt,
yeah,
it's pretty cold here.
Yeah, I don't know why you're in the office with this. Like, the office gets kind of hot in here, and it's not fun, especially in a sweater.
I need to burn the calories, Travis.
Today we have our great guest, Josh. Josh, how you doing today, man?
I am doing good. I'm not trying to be that guy, but living in Illinois, I never get to be that guy. The weather's really nice here. It's like 70 degrees today and sunny.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. I mean,
I'm like, is he joking? Like, I don't know.
No, I'm 100% honest. It is 70 degrees and sunny. Of course, tomorrow it'll probably be 20, and it'll be terrible.
Yeah, right.
But at least we got one day,
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, we live up in Washington State, and it's right now we're going through like a snow patch again. It was nice for a couple of days, and then it was like, oh, by the way, we still have some winter left for you.
Yep. You get second winter.
It rained
just like
last
we do.
night. Yeah, it rained last night after snow, and so I walked out to my truck this morning, and the roads are just like my truck. Everything's just ice. It's horrible.
My hinges were frozen this morning when I tried to open the doors.
Yeah,
man,
it sounds like your knees when you first start warming up in jiu-jitsu. It's like
sometimes that's just a sign that's saying, hey, maybe you shouldn't train today. You know, it's like, hey, maybe you shouldn't go outside today, you know?
Your truck's like, maybe you shouldn't drive me today.
Yeah.
So, hey, Josh, let's go ahead and jump into who you are and how you got into jiu-jitsu and everything like that.
So like you said, my name's Josh McKinney. I am a black belt under Kyle Watson. I've been training jiu-jitsu under him for 15 years. We did a few years of Gracie self-defense tapes before that. And that was really my first true intro into jiu-jitsu. But since then, I have basically, the whole 15 years I've been under Kyle, I've been competing and gotten to travel the country, competing a lot, have a lot of really cool matches with tough people. And also, when I got my black belt, I started a podcast called the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Show. And that is probably more of what I'm known for than my competing, and that is, I have two schools that I run, Headnod HQ and Headnod Training Center, Jerseyville. They're both in Illinois, and they have really excellent group of guys, actually starting to get a really good group of competitors at both gyms. And that is pretty much what there is to know about me.
What made you start jiu-jitsu?
So when I was 14, I was overweight. My mom was really pushing that I did something, whether it was jiu-jitsu or whether it was just some type of sport. And I went to a really small private school that actually offered no sports. And so if I was going to play a sport, I knew I would have to switch to public school or just go into their programs or something like that. Nothing really interested me, but I always was a big WWE fan. I was always a big karate movie fan, and I knew what jiu-jitsu was. We watched the UFC, and like I said, we had done a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and one day my mom finds out from one of her friends that Matt Hughes is opening a gym 5 minutes from our house. And so it was just this perfect situation. So I didn't have any interest in doing MMA or anything like that, but I knew that I wanted to do jiu-jitsu. I was interested in doing jiu-jitsu, and really I was trying to appease my mom. I just okay, I'll go do this one day a week. It'll be fun, I'm sure, but it'll be whatever. It'll just be because mom's making me do it. And I went to my first class. Kyle Watson was the coach of that first class. I was a little too young. I was a little too small. Everybody was a grown up, and I just turned 14, and I was pretty small for my age anyway. And he just kind of looked at me and had that chance to be like, dude, you're too young, you can't do it. And he just goes, let's try it out. And I did my first class. Immediately I told my mom, hey, we've got to sign up for the unlimited membership. I want to do this every day. And I've done it every day since.
What was it like 15 years ago as a child in adults class? Because my son's 14 and he does the adults class with me, and he doesn't necessarily like doing it too much because he's smaller than everyone. There's just a couple teenagers in there, but if they don't show up, he's kind of rolling with the big guys. You know what I mean?
It was so I'll paint you the picture. This is an MMA school. It's technically, people consider it one of the first super gyms, the first gyms that ever really had a lot of money put into it, facility wise. They brought in some really good coaches, and it was really, it was really set up to be an MMA school. And I'm in the jiu-jitsu program of a purely MMA school, and everybody is brand new. We signed up at the same time. So it's me at 14 years old as, everybody's easy round, and most of the people are not winning. So it was rough. It was rough for the first 6 months. And I remember, there's still guys that we joke about it now. We still train together to this day. But I remember going with certain guys at open mat, and we'd be the only people there. And it would basically be 2 hours of a grown man just thrashing me. And, for me, I never really played any sports. I really wasn't super competitive at first. And so it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't this big negative thing. I was having fun. I was enjoying doing it. And then what would happen is as I kind of got closer to 15, probably 7 or 8 months into training, I would get a sub on one of the adults, and it would be legitimate. It would be they took my back and they crossed their ankles, right? But I would get a sub. And what was really interesting was, as a kid, I would get that win, and then that guy would basically never beat me again. because as a kid, I'm able to dedicate so much more time than any of the grown-ups were to training. Also, I'm in school all day. I'm learning all day. They're at a point in life where they're not really learning other things. And so my ability to learn really was better than a lot of those guys. Even though I didn't have the physical attributes, if I could figure out a way to beat them, a lot of times it would just work repetitively. And so there was definitely a lot of, I think probably 2023 there was a lot of trauma that was built up from getting beat by a lot of those guys all the time. But it also, it greatly affected my jiu-jitsu even to this day. When I compete, I usually do middleweight, but still I probably walk around at like 190 pounds, and getting to apply little kid jiu-jitsu when you weigh 190 pounds is like super effective. It's like it works really, really well, and getting to roll on both sides of the coin as the person that's weak and the person that's strong really has given me a good perspective of jiu-jitsu. And so, to answer your question, it was rough at first. It slowly got better, and it's something that looking back now, I go, that was so valuable. I'm so glad that I got to do that.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I think you were at the forefront 15 years ago. It's like the forefront of the beginning of people training jiu-jitsu, like becoming more popular, right? Because we talk to people all the time now that, they're in late teens, 18, 19 years old, early 20s, 15 years ago when they're training now as black belts. But the next generation have been training since 4 or 5 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're 15 years old, and they've had 10, 12 years of training already, and their body is literally being made for jiu-jitsu now. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to be incredible to see what these people are like in, their 20s and 30s. Well, one, they'll probably be broken. No, but do you feel like your body kind of like morphed into like being made for jiu-jitsu? Because 14 you're just starting puberty, and then you might, depending on, I don't know, I don't want to say that I know that
I don't want to speculate on when I hit puberty.
I was like,
Josh was a late bloomer.
Yeah.
No, but
so you said that there were any questions we could ask you. When did you hit puberty, Josh?
When'd you get your first armpit hair? No, but you're still like very young. Like, do you feel like your body really kind of like morphed into being made for jiu-jitsu because you started so young?
So I had this conversation with one of my buddies the other day, and it was, I kind of like the start of it was, dude, I have lived more life doing jiu-jitsu than I have not doing jiu-jitsu at this point. I just turned 29. And so I'm like, I've been training for 15 years. I started jiu-jitsu when I was 14 years old. And so one, it's a little hard for me to picture my life before jiu-jitsu at this point, right? It's really hard for me to kind of go into, being able to train jiu-jitsu and say like, oh, well, this is what it was like before for me, right? What I started to notice though, is like, as I grew up, there were certain parts of the jiu-jitsu journey that my students were struggling with. And I would think back and I would be like, man, I dealt with that. And now it's just become a part of me. It's just become something that I don't even think about. And so there are definitely certain strengths and certain flexibilities that are bizarre that I have that I go, oh, I think that just comes from being on the mat for so long. And there's something different about doing an art, a sport, when you're doing it with adults who are all kind of staying the same physically or just diminishing just a little bit physically. And you're like shooting through this point of your life where you're going from being a little boy into a man. And like, you really are, there really is something to that growth, I guess. I have a student that's a blue belt. He's 17, and we had been having this conversation, that same conversation of these guys that you've been fighting at juvenile at blue belt, they have been training since they were 2 or 3 years old. Yeah. And he's finally eligible, because he turns 18 this year. He was eligible to do an IBJJF tournament. And we had this conversation. He's like, man, it's going to be so tough. They're going to be adults. I'm like, dude, don't worry about that. I'm telling you, the adults are not going to be the level as the juveniles. What happens first match? Of course, he draws another 17-year-old who's a world champion and has been training since he was 2 years old and has a scholarship to wrestle collegiately. And
oh my gosh.
Of course, that's who he has. And it's back to, it felt like the juvenile division where he has a war with this kid. It's this amazing match. He ends up losing, but it was only a 3-person division. So we're going to get another match. And we're going to get to fight the number 1 seed who's won stuff at adult. And I'm like, hey, I promise you, it's going to be different. You're going to go with this adult, and he's not going to be able to handle your pace. He's not going to be able to handle your jiu-jitsu. And sure enough, he went with the adult, and he was up like 18-0 and submitted him. And it was one of those things like, yeah, dude, avoid the kids, avoid the high. I mean, obviously not every juvenile division's like that, but the highest level, the green belts and the blue belts, they have been training forever. They've been training as long as me, and so that's a tough battle.
Oh, yeah, if they look at me, I'm looking the other way. I'm like, nope, I'll take the guy over there with the gray hair in his chin as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I know. That's why I compete. If I compete, it's going to be in Masters. You know what I mean? Like, I ain't got to worry about no juveniles. I ain't trying to walk on the mat like, damn, is that kid even old enough to drive yet? He's about to whoop my ass, man.
Yeah, we see it in our class because we have some kids. We've been watching them. They started at like, 13, and they're like 17 now. And I'll laugh if we have a new adult class and they go to like take it easy on them. And then I'm watching the kid just smash him, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna learn." Like,
dude,
it's such
I've been on
ego
both
check.
sides too. I've been, I've lived as the kid, and I've lived as the adult, and it's exactly how you would expect being the kid and being like, "Man, I just beat down this grown man. This guy's got a mortgage, and I just thrashed it, man."
He has a 401k. I don't even know what that is.
You're like, he's all tired. He just got off his 16-hour shift and barely made it to the gym.
You're like, listen, little dickhead. All right.
Then you're like, hey, guess what I had? You ate a salad for lunch to make weight. I had Swedish fish, I had Cheetos for lunch, dude.
Yeah.
And I just thrashed
Swedish
you.
fish, baby. No, you mentioned at the start of your journey, you did like the Gracie self-defense, Gracie combative stuff. That's so funny that you mentioned that because our academy was almost identical to your story. We all started brand new. Everyone in the school was a white belt, and we started with the Gracie combatives and stuff like that. And John and I always talk about how, like, I truly believe that set us up for success in our journey because it, like, instilled fundamentals so much into our jiu-jitsu. And also, starting with everyone being brand new too, it's everyone's at the level playing field. Do you feel like the same thing with your journey? It really helped out quite a bit.
It definitely equipped me like with the love of jiu-jitsu. And it also, I think a big thing, and maybe you guys could agree or disagree with this, but a big thing that it did for me was it kept me really open-minded because there were certain things that we learned in the Gracie combative stuff, and then eventually, like in the Gracie University stuff, the Hinner and Huron stuff that we were kind of familiar with the family, and so we wanted to kind of jump on that. We didn't realize in the competitive jiu-jitsu world how anti those guys a lot of people were, and so we were just like, no, the stuff that they show I use in competition sometimes, some of the details that they have. I went to a Huron Gracie seminar when I was a brown belt, and I think when it comes to just techniques given, I think that he had some of the best stuff that I've ever seen, just some of the simplest, most effective, best stuff that I've ever seen. And so I think that the biggest thing that it did for me, I don't know if there's any still Gracie combative thing that I still use to this day, but I do know that it put me in a situation that was way more open-minded, and I realized like, okay, I can learn jiu-jitsu from so many different places instead of just how everyone acts like you can only learn this way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I went to one of their seminars too, and for one, that's when I was like, oh, that's what people look like when they're built for jiu-jitsu. Those two guys are big, dude. They're big. I was pretty impressed. And yeah, you're right. We learned that way to begin with. And when we first opened, it was a blue belt teaching our classes. And we didn't know it. That was like God teaching our classes.
Yeah.
We didn't know any of the stuff that he was teaching. And as we got older, people were like, you can't have a blue belt teaching and or at the academy. And I was like, whatever, man. When you're brand new and you don't know anything, that blue belt might as well be a black belt.
Right. He whooped my ass like a black belt. I'll tell you that.
Dude, anytime people deal in those absolutes in the jiu-jitsu space, especially when it comes to learning, I'm sure that there are certain absolutes that you can deal in, like, hey, if you're slamming people off the mat, you're probably a jerk and everyone at your gym hates you. You can live in that absolute.
Right.
But when it comes to learning, people that will just say, you can't do this, close yourself off to this, I just don't think that they're ever accurate. I don't think that that's ever the actual, that's the truth. It's just what they were told, and they go, okay, this is what I was told, and so I'm going to pass this down to you too.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's jump into your competitive journey. You mentioned that you started pretty much competing from the very beginning. How soon after you joined the academy did you have your first competition? 3 months. My first tournament, it was like I was the youngest kid there, and my coach was a purple belt at the time, which again, to your guys' testament, is like that was just how it was back then. And he was one of the highest ranking guys that I had been around for probably my first, until we went to that first tournament. The first person that I ever saw that was a black belt is a guy named James Klingerman. He's kind of like a Midwest Jiu-Jitsu legend. And I remember seeing him at this tournament, and he was in the same division as my coach, because you didn't have black belt divisions then. You had purple, brown, and black belt divisions then, because there was just not a lot of high-level grapplers. And getting to see him in person and see a black belt in person was this like mesmerizing and just amazing thing, right? And so my coach got into this invite tournament. We lived in Illinois, and the invite was in Ohio. It was an 8.5-hour drive, and that was what you did to compete. Now like we have multiple tournaments a year, 15 minutes from my house. And then it was like, no, if you were competing, you were traveling somewhere far. You're traveling somewhere far. And I jumped in my first match. Remember, keep in mind, I'm a overweight kid learning to do jiu-jitsu. My first match, the division's 14 to 17. The kid is 17, maybe. I don't know. Dude looked like the scene in the Benchwarmers when the guy keeps saying like, I am 12. And they're like, oh, look at his birth certificate. And he opens it up, and it's green crayon written with his picture, and it says, I am 12, and there's like a $5 bill. That was what it was like. This dude has like 4 MMA fights, and I'm fighting him in the beginner division at 3 months of training, and he armbarred me so quick. I had no idea what was happening. He armbarred me so fast, I didn't even think that to tap. And the ref stopped it. He was like, yeah, dude, that looked like it was going to break your arm. And I was like, the situation was just so overwhelming, so shocking. I was like, I forgot to tap. I should have remembered to do that. And I ended up the one important thing.
Exactly. And luckily for me, my next match, the kid walked up to me after practicing his kata to warm up. And he said, hey, what's your element? And I was like, oh, I can beat this kid. I'll beat this kid for sure. I'm watching his coach go, who entered the expert division. He's getting choked unconscious in every match. And this is back when you would go to a jiu-jitsu tournament, and you would be fighting guys that didn't do jiu-jitsu. They would just come in and be like, "Yo, well, we do taekwondo, so we'll enter this jiu-jitsu tournament." And so I was able to beat that kid because he's never trained before. And it was able to give me enough confidence to keep doing it and keep competing. And I just had a blast doing it too, and kind of competed regularly ever since.
Hey everyone, this episode is brought to you by Manscaped, and I have a public service announcement. Manscaped now has beard products, and it's going even further with their brand new Weed Whacker 2.0. Go ahead and tell the world the leader in below-the-waist grooming are traveling north of your South Pole with their revolutionary grooming product. The new Weed Whacker 2.0 and their new beard line confirms they have all of the best tools for your hygiene toolbox. Time for you to upgrade your game by going to manscaped.com and using our code ETP20 for 20% off plus free shipping.
It all starts with the cordless electric beard hedger. The waterproof cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 hair cutting lengths, all with one guard. So no more messy drawers full of extra add-ons. Absolutely love the beard hedge trimmer. It is phenomenal. All the accessories that come with it and the design of the beard hedge trimmer, it's phenomenal. I can't recommend it enough. My face and my beard have never felt better.
Agreed. And I mean, just having that dial and being able to adjust it,
dude,
phenomenal.
Great.
Absolutely love it.
So get 20% off and free shipping with our code ETP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com using code ETP20. Always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. When it comes to teaching or coaching kids now, because you have such an extensive training experience as a kid. How do you approach your students if you train kids now when they compete, knowing that you had that moment of freezing and forgetting about even just tapping? How do you instill like, hey, just remember tap, or like how do you approach it now?
So first off, I mean, I do have kids in my adult class now that train with me that are 13, but I don't teach my kids classes. One of my when does this episode come out?
Tomorrow.
Okay, well, one of my guys.
I said that really weird. Tomorrow.
One of my guys that he's actually going to be getting promoted tonight. So I'll even tease it on the podcast. But he'll be a brown belt. But runs my kids program, and he is just does an awesome job with the kids. But one thing that I do still always try to make sure of is that I go and help coach when there's a tournament, just because there's a bunch of matches going. We have a big kids program, and they always seem to go at the same time. But the big thing that I push with the parents and with the kids is that I have done this since I was 14 years old. There was points in my life where I was basically fighting once or twice a month, going and competing everywhere I could, getting as many matches as I could. And out of all those kids that I fought from 14 to 17, that I know of, 2 still train. And that's it. Okay. So the battle when it comes to kids, to me, doesn't have anything to do with how good your kid is, how aggressive your kid is. It really has to do with that your kid is continuing to have fun and continuing to love jiu-jitsu. Because if you want your kid to be a black belt, they're not going to be a black belt at 15. They're not going to be a black belt at 17. They're going to get their black belt when they are old enough and that they've continued to train, right? And I've seen so many parents, especially kids that I would compete against, that put so much pressure on their kids that they needed to do this, they needed to win this tournament, they needed just whatever, that it made jiu-jitsu not fun. And as soon as jiu-jitsu becomes not fun, kids are going to stop doing it. If you don't have interest in something, you're not going to do it when you get the choice to not do it, right? And so that, to me, out of everything else when it comes to competition, is making sure your kids are having fun is the most important thing.
When you competed, do you have someone that coaches you from the corner or anything like that?
Yes. So same guy that's coached me since my first tournament. I just competed last weekend, and it was a company called Blue Corner. They did this really big St. Louis professional jiu-jitsu show, and I got to be the main event on it. My coach got to be the co-main event. And it was
this was when you did this at like 10 p.m.? Is that when you went on?
Yes, that's when we competed late.
Okay, all right.
And so
you took a nap before, got it?
I did. I took a nap before. I woke up at 5 a.m. and I was like, man, and it just naturally just woke up. And I'm like, well, I guess I've got to compete in 18 hours. That's weird. I'm like, I guess I'll just chill out or whatever. And so I ended up getting to eat and take a nap and stuff. But what was cool about the situation, of course, I can't help it. I'm standing on the stage watching my coach compete, and I'm just yelling. I'm just saying stuff. I'm just coaching. And then same exact thing. He wins his match. He walks off the stage. I walk on, and you can hear him in the video coaching me. We had somebody, we both chose, there's a guy, his name's Junior Silva. He runs a gym called Revive in our area. We're all on the same team. And basically we agreed we're going to let Junior do our training camp for us, and we're going to let him coach us, but we still just couldn't help it. We're still coaching each other. It's just like, so I normally do have my coach there with me, and I seem to perform best when I have him. It's just something familiar. There's something that goes back to when people that are really good at basketball, they say, yeah, it's like we were in the backyard again and I was just playing basketball. There's something that sends me back to being 14 years old and overweight competing at the Ohio Grappling Challenge, and it's just like, hey, even though that people are acting like this situation is big, it's like it doesn't feel big because I'm with my coach. I'm still with the same crew. We're still doing the same exact thing,
Yeah. When it comes to your students coming up to you and coach and wanting to compete, how do you approach that? Are you kind of honest with them if you feel like they might not be ready for competition because they need to work on something, or are you all about no matter skill level, start competing?
So skill level, Yes, absolutely. I don't really care. I don't care if you like have no skill at all and you want to get the experience. The reason I say that is because there is, if you want to be a competitor, getting reps of competing is one of the most important things. I have definitely lost to guys that in the gym I would have thrashed, but they just knew how to compete better than I did. They just knew when to go, when not to go. They knew how to not let the nerves get to them and make them make mistakes. And so something that I always will push with my students is always be like, okay, understand you could lose, but as long as you're going in with the attitude that you're there to learn and you're there to get better, I totally support you competing. I'll be there to coach. The only time that I will tell people not to compete, for instance, I'm talking to, I don't know if I've referenced this, but my dad is a black belt too. We started jiu-jitsu together, and we trained pretty much through together. He got his black belt like 6 months before I did. And I know, especially lately with how good our team has been doing competitively, I know that for him, he's like, I want to compete. I want to do it. But here's the thing. I talked to him, and I'm like, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think that health-wise it's worth the risk. I don't think that, you get one bad injury and then all of a sudden you can't train. He's 62 and you get one bad injury and you can't do the one thing that you love doing. And it's like, I don't think that's worth it. And so some of my older guys, I try to be really protective of them, because I know, just from getting to see my dad's experience to get to black belt, I know the importance of longevity. And so I will kind of, with that, I will kind of discourage some guys every once in a while. If they go, hey, I want to do this IBJJF, there's somebody in my actual age group and actual weight class, do you think I should do it? Like, yeah, that's totally different. But if we're doing something local and there's a chance that you get your division tied together with the adults, or you know what I mean, something like that, then I'll maybe discourage a little bit. But most of the time, if somebody wants to, I'm like, hey, let's do it. Let's compete.
Yeah, we get pretty lucky at the competitions they have around here. They break it down by age pretty good. Now they got they even added a 50 and up bracket, which
that's
I think
awesome.
Is pretty cool. Yeah,
that's awesome. I've had guys that were 50 be put in like Master 1, which is like 30 and up.
Yeah.
They're like, dude, this guy, I mean, in a year, I would be fighting a 50-year-old in those, in those circumstances. Like, that doesn't make sense. And
I watched our friend Billy do that. He was 51 and nobody was in his age group, so they knocked him down one. And I was watching from the stands. I was like, you poor bastard.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oof.
The energy was just different.
So how do you approach competing now? Like, has your mindset changed or your approach to competing changed since you've been doing it for so long?
Absolutely. I mean, when you're a kid, something nice is that you tend to overthink things less. But as I started to get older, the competition got tougher. Like the level of guys I'm fighting all the time is getting tougher. I started to notice that I would struggle more with competition anxiety. I was competing less frequently. Now if I was looking back at myself at Purple Belt, I would just told myself, hey, you just need to compete more. You'll figure those things out naturally. But there are two main things that me and my students use that work really, really well for competition approach anymore. And the first one is, for that anxiety of the match. This is an actual physical thing and not just a way to think. But for that anxiety of the match, Wim Hof breathing can totally change the anxiety that you experience in the lead up to a jiu-jitsu match. Something about it separates your mind from your body. There's just something about that, like forced hyperventilation, that just makes you go, oh, I think dying of not being able to breathe is what I was worried about. And since in this controlled environment, I let myself almost die from not being able to breathe, it kind of just puts you there, and it's really helpful. The second thing is a mindset, and the mindset is just do jiu-jitsu. So often when you go compete, you want to think about, this guy's going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger. What did he weigh in at? What did I weigh in at? What belt level does he have? But in the gym, you really wouldn't think of those things at all. In the gym, you would just do jiu-jitsu. You would just go and grapple. You wouldn't care. You would go, oh, this guy thrashed me. Oh, cool, whatever, But you would try to grapple. You would try to get into your grip fights. You would try to win. You would get into your best positions. When you would land in your best positions, you would go, finally, I'm here. I can go. But so often, because we watch too many movies, we want there to be this like mental battle or this like war of attrition in our jiu-jitsu matches. And a lot of times we bring that in. And I think if you start to get yourself more comfortable just with that idea of, hey, just go out and grapple. Who cares what happens? I think the story I always use in this, we were using this statement and this saying a lot. But I remember specifically, it was like Pans 2 years ago. 2 of my white belts were there competing. I was actually on vacation in Florida, and I just drove up to coach them. I wasn't planning on being there. It just kind of worked out. And I go up and I coach them, and it's 2 brothers, and so shout out to Allen Brothers Jiu-Jitsu. But they're both ready to go. Bryce is doesn't seem nervous. I kind of give him his little pep talk, but Brian, the older brother, he's seeming really nervous. And I'm like, okay, tell me what you're dealing with. Tell me what you're feeling. And he's like, I want to do good. I want to win this. I want to go, do my best at least. And he's just really nervous. And I go, Brian, we're from Granite City, Illinois. You're in Orlando, Florida competing right now. Okay. You've already won. I go, who else do we know that gets to travel the country to go fight people, right? And I go, so I want you to think about this. I go, you go to work on Monday, and Gretchen from accounting could have gotten a face tattoo, but you still would have done the coolest thing this weekend. You went and fought somebody in Florida. And I go, so since you've already won, since there's nothing to lose, how about you just go do jiu-jitsu? And so Brian goes out, and he was on a string of losing too. He goes out in his first match, and he chokes his guy unconscious. And it was like dominant performance. And he was a tough guy. And he runs off the mat, and he goes, I just did jiu-jitsu. And we end up keeping that going. And he ends up losing to the guy that wins it in the semifinal. So he does get third. He has like 4 or 5 matches, just an amazing performance. But the whole time, every single time he would get done competing, we would walk off the mat and he would say, I'm just doing jiu-jitsu. I'm just grappling. And that was the mindset we stayed in. And that's my example for why we started to really push this mindset. And even my students, actually, when I woke up on Saturday morning for this match that I had, it's this big match. It's the main event. It's against a tough guy. And my wife's like, well, what are you going to do tonight? And I was like, I'm gonna, go for a collar tie. She said, no. She goes, what are you going to do tonight? And I'm like, okay, you obviously are looking for a specific answer. Go ahead.
Typical married life.
Yep. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm wrong. And she goes, just do jiu-jitsu. And I was like, thanks, babe. You're right. And that was, what I did. And that approach to me, of course, I have game plans. Of course, we work specifically for, specific situations now. But if there's one thing that I got to take, that has helped me over and over and helped so many of my students, it is that statement, just do jiu-jitsu.
When it comes to, your wife is a blue belt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she trains under you, obviously, right? So how does that affect your marriage or your relationship with each other? Because I often see couples that train together, and it's kind of like when kids train with their parents. It builds that like really strong bond of going through some adversity with each other. How has it helped your marriage or your relationship with each other?
So I don't know if specifically it has helped our marriage. I don't know if we communicate better because of it or anything like that. But I know that, you guys train jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean. Jiu-jitsu helps people, It helps individuals. And at least until my wife got her blue belt, now we do train together a little more. But until she got her blue belt, we really didn't train together. I kind of let the other guys coach her because I have so many very capable coaches at my gym that don't have a relationship with her that, you know what I mean? Because there's something weird in the situation. Like, okay, at home, we're equals. But then we go to the gym and I'm a black belt and you're a white belt. And my way of dealing with that was simply to not deal with it and just to go, hey, how about you just learn from the other guys? You just absorb jiu-jitsu and you just let jiu-jitsu get you better. And I'll be here on the drive home when, you're upset because you lost tonight and, and help you with those things. But when it comes to techniques and when it comes to, me saying what you could do better, I'm not going to do that. I just, like I said, that's why I think it didn't change our marriages, because we had that good communication. We had that structure already. And we both recognized it, obviously in the beginning we tried, but we both recognized like, it doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to work very well when it's you and I'm trying to tell you jiu-jitsu, because normally, if it was anything else, you would be like, okay, I can question this. But here, you're not allowed to question. I'm just this ultimate authority on positions and on concepts and ideas and stuff. And yeah, just to avoid that, we just didn't train. We rolled together sometimes, but that was about it.
Yeah, that's smart. When my wife and I first met, I was a coach at our gym at a CrossFit gym, and she had came to join our CrossFit gym. And so when we first started dating, she would be in my classes, and I would coach her and whatnot. And we always make the joke of like, before we started dating, she would listen to everything I had to say. I was right about technique and whatnot. And then the second we started dating, it was like, I don't know anything about fitness. I don't know anything about technique. She'll go to someone else to teach them. And, that's a joke, obviously. But, it like to your point, if you have that kind of separation and then you can come back to it, it honestly, to me, it sounds like a perfect situation, because especially when someone's feeling vulnerable and they don't know, and then, you're kind of sitting there and you're like, look, babe, you could probably be doing this better. You could be doing this. Like, I know I could be doing this better. And, it can build off of that. And I don't know, that's a really smart way to look at it. It's like, because I feel honestly myself, I would go the opposite route. If my wife were to join, I think I would try too hard, but I'm a stupid blue belt. So obviously we try to coach everyone anyways. So, but you mentioned, one of your big things is designated winner. And I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, because we kind of implemented the same thing. Cody, our gym owner, he started listening to Greg Souders, and he was like really taken away about this whole mindset shift in how to coach and how to implement technique and how things should be a game and whatnot. How did you fall into the designated winner mindset for coaching?
So, first off, I always like to make sure I clarify, I did not invent designated winner. I just coined the term. I was just like one of the first people that said, hey, I'm noticing, and maybe systemized it a little bit, right? But I'm noticing when I'm getting to travel that certain high-level gyms are training ways that doesn't have a name. And what they're doing is they're not rolling live, they're not positional sparring, but they're not just drilling either. There is almost this, and I think, and I'm big on trying to look at other places other than just jiu-jitsu, because jiu-jitsu eventually, when you get enough people that we all look to the same five guys for all of our ideas, we start to create a little bit of an echo chamber in jiu-jitsu, and we might stop progressing, right? And so something I heard a lot in wrestling, and I specifically remember a Ben Askren interview. I don't remember where it was, but he was saying the biggest problem that they have in jiu-jitsu is that they don't drill enough. And it was actually, it took me a while to understand this, but it was actually just a language barrier between wrestling and jiu-jitsu. When wrestling talks about drilling, they are pretty close to what I would call designated winner a lot of the time, meaning I'm going to go for this single leg, give me 20% resistance, give me 40% resistance. And just that little bit of, I am going to go for this and you give me resistance, I noticed that, yeah, I think Ben Askren's right. I think that we aren't doing this. And I actually watched his documentary specifically because I was curious if he would talk about training method. And he does. He talks about how he and another guy, they would call it flowing. They would stay after practice and just for hours work really deeply in positions. They would discuss the positions back and forth, and they would say, it works better if I do this. Give me a little resistance. And then they would drill it. And that's what their drilling was. It wasn't like we think of drilling in jiu-jitsu. Hey, Josh is going to show a guard pass. Everybody do it the exact same way that Josh does it, right? And then kind of the other side of that is how I was starting to learn to teach differently. So instead of teaching a guard pass, I started to focus on what am I thinking about when I'm doing this guard pass? Because I could hit 3 or 4 different guard passes from this situation. I could go here, I could go here, I could finish this guard pass all these different ways. So I started to look at certain things, certain ideas. One of them we call, you hear people talk about like chest to chest passing a lot. Something that we use, a term we use a lot is chin over trap, right? If you are guard passing and you get your chin over the trap of your opponent and they are not touching your hips, those are the only things you need. You are able to flatten your opponent. If you flatten your opponent, they are not going to be as good at jiu-jitsu. If they're on all 4 of their main joints, both shoulders and both hips, they will absolutely not be as good. You're not as strong from that position. You can't blade yourself, which is what we do to defend. Like if you think about what a shrimp is just the ability to get off a flat. You can't do that. And so we started to look, okay, there are these ideas, these big overarching ideas that are more helpful than me showing you guys 10 passes. You can do 10 different guard passes and even figure them out, as you'll hear Greg Souders talk about. You will figure these things out intuitively because you are realizing what the real big goal is or the real big game is. And so with those pieces, we started to try to make a training method. And this was made over months and months of just training with my dad, training with my students. And we really didn't have a name. We're just like, hey, we're drilling, and that's what we kept calling it. And eventually we started to get it structured and we started to create it in a sense that I would go into class on a Monday and I would go, okay, guys, we're going to play designated winner tonight. And we are going to do, this is the idea. It is chin over trap, right? I want you to focus on chin over trap. You can add knee cut. You can do, you can even do like double under stack pass and get chin over trap. And that's when you'll be able to finish the pass. You'll be crushing the person with a double under. Like we're going to look at it like this. They'll give you a bunch of options. And now you guys implement it. So the real reason that designated winner works, in my opinion, is because the best way to actually learn something is to combine it with what you already know. And so you're going to then take the 3 guard passes that you like to do. Your opponent is going to give you 20% resistance, no more than 20%. And I'll even, I'll break it down even further and say, this is what 20% resistance is. Only frames, no grips. If you're gripping on the person and tying them up, that's what we'll consider 40% resistance. And if, since you're only doing 20%, if the dude is just being a bulldozer and breaks right through your frames, just let him. And so what it starts to do is, one, for the top person, you're willing to try stuff because you're not worried about losing. That's why we call it designated winner. The top guy is the DW, the designated winner. And so you're not worried about losing. And you're able to start to, basically, the best way to explain it for me is when you play a video game, you're playing a shooting game. You first have to learn about like how to use the screen and then how to aim and then how to run and how to jump. And then those are all your skills and you have to do them in a live situation. So you could either just jump online against guys that have been playing forever who will just murder you, or you can go into the training room of the game and start to go, okay, well, we're not worried about shooting. We're not worried about aiming. We're just learning how to run and jump. And then you can get good at running and jumping, right? And so designated winner can become this control room where you start to say, I'm not worried about getting armbarred. Like I get armbarred all the time. I'm not worried about it right now. I'm just worried about getting my offense, practicing my offense. And what's really cool is you'll do it for a 3-minute round. Then you'll stop. You'll do it for another 3-minute round. By that second one, maybe it doesn't always happen, but by the third one, you'll go, I can feel myself getting better at these guard passes. I am hitting them with less effort. I'm hitting them with better angles. I'm hitting them because you are learning intuitively. You knew where your goal was. And of course, if there's ever like, it's not like all my students are just teaching themselves, right? They are asking questions and they're saying, hey, I'm getting stuck here. They're framing my hips. Well, remember the rule was if they're touching your hips, then the chin over trap doesn't work anymore. And so you've got to what? You've got to free your hips, and then you go back to your chin over trap passing. And so we start to do it like that. We do these, these reps, and then you can even add more resistance. You can say, okay, well, now we're going to go to 40% resistance. This time, the guy might tie you up. He might get you in spider guard, or he might get you in lasso. And what you're going to do is you are going to feel your way through it. He's just going to hold you there. If he puts you in a triangle, remember, you're the designated winner. He's not going to finish it. You're going to get a rep escaping a triangle. You're going to make sure you get your posture. You're going to make sure you get this or that. And so there's like a few little avenues. Obviously, the fact that you don't have to worry about losing. You're able to add in whatever you want. You're able to add in your jiu-jitsu that you already like and you already know, and connect it to the new skill that I'm trying to teach. And it is not deadpan drilling. Deadpan drilling is the most boring thing in the world.
Yeah,
you play designated winner, and you have the right music on. You literally can do it, and you like have your timer set. You know what you're going to work. You can do it for an hour and a half before you will go, man, I'm starting to get a little bored doing this. Literally. We'll do it for an hour and a half, and we'll get done, and guys will be like, whoa, that went by really fast. And so I just think, to me, having that structure of it, I think for so many schools, that's a big missing piece, is that bridge between deadpan drilling and positional sparring, or even for some schools, deadpan drilling and just live rolling. Designated winner is kind of that bridge between the two. And I mean, I see it in my students. My students have been, since we've really adapted this, it's probably been like 18 months. So we've really been focused on it. And I notice that my students are getting better than they ever have. Just because they're learning how to drill, they're learning how to have good conversation between the, because sometimes you're doing it, if you're doing designated winner with me and you're hitting a pass, I'll be like, oh, that felt good. And then you're going to go in your mind and be like, I'll go, hey, hit 2 more reps of that. I'll give you the same resistance, hit 2 more reps. And then you'll hit those 2 reps, and we'll kind of get this rhythm back and forth between us, where I'm kind of grasping, oh, he's hitting this pass because he's getting this grip. And then when it's my turn, I'm going to try to get that grip and use that because that pass was cool, right? And so you're able to feed off. And to me, the level of progression that you get in that is just so much more than anything else I've ever seen.
When it comes to like new students with designated winner, my with the little bit that we've been doing it, how would you approach like a day one, or within the first couple months that they don't have that firm grasp of the basics yet, right? So if you're like, hey, go ahead, pass their guard, they're gonna be like, yeah, I don't even know what that means. You know what I mean? It's kind of like goes with the conceptual idea to me. Like you have to have you have to have a base, like a foundation of like somewhat of knowledge in certain positions and understanding these things in order for these things to actually be effective. How do you implement them for like newer practitioners?
So I totally agree. As somebody who probably gets now put as a conceptual teacher, I think that you should not be full concept. It's just my opinion. I don't think that you should absolutely show only concept. Be like, hey, I don't want to show any technique ever because it will limit people's creativity. I don't think that it's like that. I think that a lot of times the concept works more if you have more context, right? Mm-hmm. And our context is techniques. So when it comes to conceptual teaching and things like that, I don't want people to ever think that I'm like anti-teaching techniques and stuff. I definitely still teach techniques, but I use them as tools to solve the concept, right? And so like the biggest way to look at it though from a low-level person, from a white belt, is the same thing that we were just talking about with the video game. Right? The more things that you add in, the harder it's going to be for you to focus on one. And so I will limit it so much. I will limit the game so much. So here is a good example of that. And this is like, we're still, designated winner still in the infancy too. And so there are going to be people that figure out, hopefully now more people are talking about it, more people are trying it. So hopefully there are going to be people that are telling me different ways to grow it and do better with it. But the simpler I can make the game, the better it is. Okay. So we had this idea of there's a precursor to every guard pass. And the precursor is going to be control of the upper thighs, okay? So you think about any guard pass that you do, whether that control is my shin with a knee cut, whether it's my hand if I'm doing a leg weave, whether it's both of my hands when I'm doing a double underpass. Control of the upper thigh is a precursor to passing the guard. Okay.
God damn it! I'm gonna pause real quick because I'm like running through every guard pass I do in my head, and I'm like, God damn it! How come I've never heard that before? That's like
right. And so you think about even a Toriando pass. Oh well, I'm not touching the upper thigh. Yep. What do I do with my shin to actually finish the Toriando pass, or my shoulder to actually finish the Toriando pass? I drop it to the upper thigh.
Yep.
And so we can use this a few different ways. We can use it for guard passing, trying to control the upper thighs. Or for me, what makes more sense and is more fun and is super simple, use it for guard retention. I used to teach guard retention and say things like, okay, never overextend your legs. Do this, do that, feet here, do this. I would have all these rules. And I taught this way for years. And then one day I said, all of guard retention is keeping the person off of your upper thighs. Do not let them touch your upper thighs. So we're going to start designated winner at 20%. And it's not even a real jiu-jitsu round. All you're going to do is you are going to have the top person try to control the upper thighs with their hands, with their legs, with whatever. They can be creative and they can have fun with it. But they're going to try to, and you're going to be active with your grip fighting, and you're going to free your upper thighs. So we start playing this game. And I literally have my purple and brown belts that have been with me since I opened my gym 7.5 years ago. And they are grasping the concepts of not overextending, of keeping your knees in tight. They're grasping these things through the game and not through, I've been teaching them these things for years, and they're grasping them through the game. And so that right there was big, right? It was something really simple, and it was just a simple game. And we played this game for like 4 weeks, and then we moved on to guard passing. And on the day we moved on to guard passing, we were just doing a day of full-on designated winner. I wasn't teaching anything on the night. And I was just letting you, we always call it like learning from the room. You know, we just have a really strong room. We have a lot of upper belts now. So you're kind of learning from everybody. There's a brand new guy on his first day, and he was invited by a white belt who had been training for 6 months. And so I'm prepared to go help, but I'm just, I'm curious. I'm just like watching what's going on. I'm like, I wonder what these guys are going to do. The timer's set. So I'm watching the 6-month white belt, and I'm seeing he's explaining something. And then I look, and they're playing a game, and it's guard retention, and they're playing off the upper thighs. And so literally, the game was so simple that a 6-month white belt correctly taught another white belt to play the game. And without me at all, literally without my use at all, I did not have to help. And then later on the night, one of my tougher blue belts goes, hey, this new kid is going to be good. And I go, why do you say that? He goes, intuitively, he knew how guard retention worked. I don't know how, but he was retaining guard on me. And I go, dude, he was playing the upper thigh game. And the blue belt was like, no way. That really? Like, yeah, that was all that happened. And so that's obviously just more of an example than anything. But as long as you're keeping it really, really simple, you can even keep it in the idea of like, your job as the top person from side control is to keep the other person flat, right? That is what your whole job is. If you listen to me coaching at a tournament, people will be like, oh man, you're so good at coaching live matches. I'm like, no, I yell the same crap over and over and over again. And it's so structured now. I don't even coach anymore. My students are yelling what I would be yelling. Keep them flat. Keep them flat. We're not worried about Kimura, arm lock, anything. We're just worried about winning that fight. Keep them flat. We know that when we drill it in the gym, that's the whole job. Keep the person flat. If he's flat, he ain't escaping. And so we just start to do that. We start to play it that way. It helps with coaching. It helps with understanding. And you can take those things of like, okay, well, my only job is to keep you flat. And you start to find submissions off that. You start to find other things. And you can even, once somebody has positional sparred or designated winner sparred, side control for enough time, and they know that their job is to keep them flat, well, then you can start adding submissions to their designated winner. They know the real fight, the real thing that matters. And then you start to add those finishes and they start to actually get success with them and actually hit them. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. It's John and I, our school, like I said, Cody, when he was coaching, our main professor is a black belt, and he teaches high school wrestling. So he's gone for like 3 or 4 months out of the year for just coaching wrestling season. And so Cody really implemented it, and I don't know, it's been a game changer for us.
Yeah, we really enjoyed it. And I remember part of my heartache like year 2 was everything was really structured, and we had to do everything exactly the way it was taught. And I hated it. I was like, it felt so stifling because I was like, man, sometimes like I just can't move this way, but I wanted to try it a different way. And they were like, no, you got to do it this way. I was like, I hated that. Breaking news. Manscaped now sells beard products. That's right. They are once again revolutionizing men's grooming with the brand new Beard Hedger Pro Kit. From a beard trim to a fresh shave, the technology behind the Beard Hedger Pro Kit allows you to shape your signature beard look. Now you can finally use Manscaped products to make sure your drapes match your carpet. By going to manscaped.com and using the code ETP20 for 20% off and free shipping. Again, that's ETP20 for 20% off and free shipping.
It's time to tame your mane. No one likes a weird beard, so say goodbye to the stubble trouble with Manscaped's Pro Beard Kit. My wife hates when I have stubble. She's like, don't even kiss me. Trim that mustache. And thanks Manscaped for making it possible now.
It all starts with the Beard Hedger. This thing is a juggernaut for fixing faces. First off, the cordless trimmer has a rotary wheel that gives you 20 haircutting lengths, all with one guard, so no more messy drawers full of extras and add-ons. That's right. Face grooming doesn't need to be hard. Get 20 different beard lengths in just one guard.
The Pro Beard Kit also comes with 3 free gifts: a beard brush, comb, and scissors to ensure your beard is ready to impress.
So get 20% off and free shipping with the code ETP20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. Use the code ETP20. Manscaped Beard Hedger, 1 stroke, 1 guard, 20 lengths.
Thanks, Manscaped, for sponsoring this episode.
So I was actually hoping that this conversation would come up. So I want to say it was Travis who said this. I was listening to your guys' show, and you guys were talking to Jordan.
Pressinger?
Jordan. Yeah. Jordan does jiu-jitsu. And you guys were talking about the idea of inverting. And you were saying, I would like to, a goal I have is I would like to invert more. Okay. It was you who said that, right? Travis,
I'm not. Okay.
And
he's too old to invert.
Yeah, I'm like, you'll never hear me say that. Yeah,
his back might as well be fused at his age.
And so if you think about what inverting is, and you look at that same game of controlling your upper thighs, only reason you invert is because you can glue your upper thighs to your stomach, and it prevents me from getting connection on them, right? That's why I can't flatten you into side control into north-south. So I just thought it would be fun. You can let me know how it goes. You can shoot me a text message in a few weeks, but try to add the upper thigh game to your training and see if you ever even need to invert. You will find that you don't. So many people, when you're trying to pass on top, a good inverter, you'll go, man, this is obviously a huge thing. This is obviously so important to jiu-jitsu is being able to invert. But anymore, I don't invert. I inverted when I was a kid. And then when I started to realize what was actually happening and how I could actually defend, and if I just protected my upper thighs, I didn't need to make that stressful position on my back. But you can kind of look at that and experiment and play some designated winner rounds with it. And not that I will guarantee, but I will guarantee you that your guard retention, you will note, you'll be like, dude, I can be chill. I could go into practice with no intention of doing anything but retaining my guard. And like, nobody's passing me anymore. The other, like I said, the other little note on that you're beating the upper thigh control. And then if you want to add your own offense to it, then you control the person's thighs, or you control the person's hips, meaning you put your feet on their hips, right?
Yeah.
You can use a De La Hiva hook. You can use spider guard. But if you put a frame on their hips, they're not passing anymore. And if you protect your upper thighs, they're not passing anymore. Those two things, you add that into designated winner, you build up the the intensity, 20% at first, the guy's trying to control your upper thighs, then 40%. Then eventually you're going with guys who are just trying to pass your guard. And your only thought, keep my upper thighs controlled, keep my upper thighs controlled. You'll learn to create distance. You'll learn to do all kinds of other things. but the big note will be to keep your upper thighs from getting controlled. And you can tell me like a month from now and let me know.
Try it.
We can we can kind of do it as a little experiment. And
no one that at my gym listens to this podcast. So no, I'm just kidding. They were like, I'm touching Travis's upper thighs the whole time.
Yeah, we got this guy now.
So whenever the jiu-jitsu community kind of, especially in the realm of Reddit, whenever they have someone that comes out with something that kind of changes the traditional look of what jiu-jitsu is, they get kind of forced or they get kind of met with a lot of, I don't know, negativity, kind of like Preet Michelson, he with the defensive jiu-jitsu, he's like absolutely hated on the internet for it. You know, like whenever someone kind of challenges what this traditional idea is of jiu-jitsu, they get a lot of pushback. Have you noticed that with, you and Greg Souders, they're kind of like, that's stupid. Why would you ever do that?
So I would say no, not for designated winner. I haven't. And
Really?
The reason I haven't is because I did a good job of filtering anybody out at my podcast episodes before that by saying things like, shrimping is stupid, like shrimping up and down the mats, to warm up, like that, to me, it doesn't make sense to do.
Topic.
Right. And
Don't get me started.
And so, yeah. And so I know people hate me for that, right? People get so mad at that. But what it did was it also filtered out all those people that would hate me for shrimping up and down the mat. And the people that were left, they were open to the idea of designated winner, right? And so I haven't gotten met with enough. And I just think that, like, I think some of the right people started doing it. And it was just kind of, I just had some of the right situations. I got to, the first time I ever showed designated winner was at this yearly jiu-jitsu camp that they do in Wisconsin called the Stronghold Camp. And I'm going to be teaching in it in June of this year too. But I taught last year, and the other coaches were Mark Vives, who's like one of the most active masters competitors that there is, and then Chewy. And so they got to be there. They were there while I was showing it. And so I really had some good guys to say, like, hey, this is stupid, or like, this is good. And both guys were really cool about it, and they were really encouraging about it. And so that gave me a lot of confidence. But then what kind of happened just through like odd luck is Mark, is super open-minded guy, starts telling his students like, hey, we were doing something similar to this. We'll just call it designated winner. And he just starts to really push that name. And so I start to see stuff on Instagram that's like, yeah, we're drilling designated winner, and people didn't know it came from me. Like, people I've known for long periods of time, and they're like,
me, baby.
they don't listen to my show, obviously, but they just like, hey, we heard of this. I'm gonna drill it, right? So enough people were doing that. I got like Jake Luigi from Less Impressed, More Involved. You guys familiar with that YouTube show?
Yeah, Jake. He's coming on the show also.
Awesome. And so he, he was a guy that early on, he was an early designated winner adapter. And so, I think he has a lot more like credibility than I do. A lot of more people know him. And so him kind of pushing it and saying how much it's helped him, I kind of like it started to come out more after other people had done it than when I started pushing it. And so I didn't get met with a ton of resistance.
John, you want to talk about warm-ups? Because I know that's a great topic for
I love our
John.
Warm-ups right now. What are you talking about?
But no, like line drills and stuff like that.
Yeah, first couple of years, our warm-ups were probably a good 30, 35 minutes, and it was a lot of, the duck walks and shrimping up and down the mat and cartwheels and push-ups and diamond push-ups and crunches. I was like, dude, I feel like I signed up for CrossFit again. Like, but I didn't like that type of warm-up. That kind of warm-up wasn't for me.
How do you implement warm-ups?
I feel like you guys were trying to set me up on a hot take here, so I'll give it to you guys.
Let me go ahead.
I'll let you guys know.
You want me to pause the recording? You can just say this offline.
Everyone knows I hated those warm-ups.
So for me, yes, I when my coach first started, teaching, he was teaching like everybody else, right? And we would do these warm-ups. And when I started my school, I think I initially would do those too. And I started to question, okay, these guys get to train 3 times a week. That's probably the average, right? They get trained for 1 hour, 3 times a week. Is this the most efficient use of their time? For if the goal is to get better at jiu-jitsu, because to me, there is no other goal when you are on the mat. Of course, we have the camaraderie, we have all those other things, but the only goal that you should really have when you're on the mat is progression, is getting better at jiu-jitsu. And to me, duck walks, push-ups, jumping jacks, cartwheels do not make you better at jiu-jitsu. And here is where people get offended. I don't think that shrimping up and down the mat makes you better at jiu-jitsu. And the reason I say that is because the movement of shrimping up and down the mat is not actually the same movement that you do when you are escaping side control or you are escaping mount. Really, what you're trying to do when you are escaping those positions is use distance to your favor and learn how to get on one side. That's a pre-Mickelson idea, right? Is if you can get on your shoulder and your hip, you are so much more defensive than if you were flat, right? And so instead of worrying about can you shrimp up and down the mat the way that I visualize you should be able to, I think can you accomplish the goal that we're actually trying to accomplish when we shrimp, which is can you get on your side and your hip? It's totally different when you have another human being on top of you. You have to learn how to scoot out from underneath the person, which is not a shrimping movement, right? Because you don't have that resistance on top. And so I think it's something that for a long time, it was used to fill time in a class, right? And like, you got to remember the initial jiu-jitsu teaching is also like selling too. You have to keep selling your jiu-jitsu and making it fun. And people knew if I make people sweaty and I make them feel like they worked really hard the same way you would in a workout, that you're going to go, oh, that was effective. I got better. But to me, I'm like, hey, now we're competing. I don't care about, if you feel or not as effective. I want you to get better. And so to me, that's like, I don't anymore. Our warm up is usually the first round of designated winner that we do. It's I teach something and then we get right into designated winner. We then increase the intensity. We then turn it to positional sparring. And then we go into live sparring. And that's pretty much how I teach, how I like to do mine. And it really is just because I think so often time is wasted on the mat. And to me, this is the most efficient way that I know of right now to get people better.
Yeah, and I think we've kind of morphed that way now. It's just some stretching and then right into some positional and right into technique, which I like.
Yeah, we had Malachi Freeman on our podcast couple years ago, and I made a podcast clip out of him talking about how he thinks jiu-jitsu warm-ups are stupid, right?
Yep.
Same thing. And people in the comment section on YouTube are hilarious, man, because he literally spells it out perfectly how he thinks traditional warm-ups of calisthenics, push-ups, shrimping, he thinks that's stupid. He's not saying that warming your person up is stupid. He's saying this methodology of warming up someone is stupid, right? He likes to use drills or things like that in order to get the body warm for jiu-jitsu by doing jiu-jitsu, right? And another Jordan, I think it was Jordan in our first interview with him, he talks about how warm-ups are stupid also because you're going to get sweaty for 10 minutes and then you're going to sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and watch technique and then you're going to do 4 or 5 reps and then you're going to sit there and watch again. Like to me, it's not practical in longevity because I'm going to warm up, I'm going to cool off. I'm going to warm up, I'm going to cool off. You know what I mean? So it's just, I don't know. I don't think it should be a hot take. Like you mentioned, like to me, if you look at it objectively, like what are you actually doing? You know what I mean? But that's just me.
Yeah, and I think a couple years ago it would have been a hot take, but I think everyone's kind of changing now.
I think that just it's pretty typical in it's probably not just jiu-jitsu. It's probably every aspect of life. But you get into this mode of you look at it in anything that we have. We are the smartest right now. This is the smartest that we've ever been in as a society, and that's what it's acted like. That's what it's sold as. And with jiu-jitsu, it's the same thing. Like now, we have everything figured out. It's like, dude, this art's 75 years old, and it had to travel between a language to get here. And you're telling me that we have everything figured out, that now it's time to stop looking outside the box and it's just time to focus on what we have. There's just no way. That just does not make sense to me. Especially when I start to see the growth, when I start to get all these different podcast guests on and they talk about ideas I've never heard of. And I'm like, dude, I've been around jiu-jitsu for so long and I'm just now hearing about this and I'm just now starting to understand this. And to me, that is like, it's just the opposite of the learner's mindset in jiu-jitsu. And so often I think it comes from higher level guys. They stop learning and they just like, okay, I'm good here, obviously. And they're amazingly good grapplers. But the thing is, the game changes, things change. And if you're not adapting, if you're not paying attention to what's going on, I do think you end up getting left behind.
Yeah, that's funny you mentioned that. Craig Jones was just on a podcast where there's a bunch of clips that came out. And, one of the things he talks about is, club black belts or whatever, right? Guys that get their black belt and they own a school, but they don't watch tape. They're not keeping up with what's modern jiu-jitsu. They're not keeping up with the new things, right? They stick with what they learned in their journey, and that's it. To you, what makes a good coach? Like what aspects of a person makes them a good coach?
I think that the first thing if I was looking for a coach, and this is something I've been so fortunate to have, but I think that you should have your morals match up with your coach. I think that is just totally random, but I think for the future for your jiu-jitsu, I just know so many people that have had these really bad breakups with their coach just because their morals were not in line with each other. So I think that is going to be big because that's a big point of trust. And the coach-student relationship is give and take. I have learned so much over the last few years from my students. So many podcast episodes that I had were totally inspired by questions that my students have asked me or tournament situations that they've been in. And, so like having that back and forth. But this was the number one thing that my coach always did that I feel like separated him from everybody else. And it was that he was willing to learn. He was not closed off ever. If I wanted to learn from my Eddie Bravo rubber guard book that I had next to my toilet, and I brought in some moves, he wouldn't say, hey, those are YouTube moves, don't do that. And I know that's less common now. But 15 years ago, that was so common. Close yourself off to ideas. Oh, no, we don't do ankle locks. We don't think that they work. My coach would say, could you make them work? How could you make them work? Yeah. And he was so big on always bringing in anybody he could from the outside to give us a new perspective. And he would just kind of cherry pick. He would take what he liked and then he would leave the rest, right? And we so often, especially in the way that we view, I think politics, we do this in jiu-jitsu so much. You look at I don't like what this guy says about this one topic, and so I hate this guy. And what about 90% of the other stuff that he says that you like, but you refuse because you don't like that other 10%, right? You say, I can't endorse this person in any way. And we do that in jiu-jitsu so much too, where we'll go, I don't listen to the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show because we shrimp up and down our mats, and Josh says not to. Who cares? What if you shrimp up and down your mats, but you could get some value from something else, right?
Yeah.
Something else that's talked about, something else that I say. And so often in jiu-jitsu, we don't do that. And that's something that my coach just always did. He always made sure that we listened to everybody, we heard out everybody, we experimented all the time. He's just so willing to get inspired from all these different places and try different things. And so for me, that's where I think that's where you develop a good coach's mindset, because it's going to be so many little lessons learned and little things that make you a great coach. And the only way you're going to have those experiences is if you don't get too rigid in your thinking and you don't say, okay, now I've got it figured out. I mean, you guys could ask me 10 years from now and I would be like, oh no, designated winner sucks. I don't do that anymore. I do this, right? And I think just being willing to do that and being willing to say, okay, I always explain it to my students like this. You ask me a question today, and then you ask me 3 years from now, my answers may be totally different, but they still could be right. They both could be right? I just understand a little deeper or a little differently, or I'm giving you a different perspective that I think you know now. And I think the only way to get that relationship with a coach is to have an open-minded coach.
Yeah, absolutely. John, you got anything else, man?
I don't, man. That's some good advice. Luckily, we have some really good coaching right now, so that's good.
Absolutely. So, Josh, you've said you listen to the show. We always like to end the show on the same question. If you could give one piece of advice to a white belt just starting off, what would it be?
Listen to the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. But,
on the Elbows Tight podcast.
But if it wasn't that, if it wasn't a self-promotion thing, I think that I really think get inspired, get as much advice as you can. You're gonna, a lot of the stuff that you hear, a lot of stuff that people say to you is probably 90% wrong. It probably isn't the best advice in the world, but just get perspective, gather as much as you can, and then experiment on your own. Don't trust that, this Josh McKinney guy says that designated winner works. Experiment with it. See if it actually works. If it doesn't work for you, you've given it a fair shake and you go, it doesn't work, then don't do it. Move on to something else. And I think that, like I said, it's just so easy to get rigid with our mindsets of any part of jiu-jitsu. And it happens from white belt. You hear from white belt, somebody says closed guard is the most important position. And then you work for years trying to develop closed guard. And then somebody says, hey, dude, your legs are like a foot long. There's no way you're going to have a good closed guard, and you're like, oh my gosh, I listened to that absolute and I got rigid, right? And instead you experiment with closed guard and you go, man, I can't get closed guard to work. You ask your questions, you talk to different people, and you go, maybe it just isn't for me. And then you move on to the next thing. And you start to look at, maybe I'll try this. Maybe I'll try half guard, and I think that just don't get too rigid, get inspired as much as you can. And inspiration is different for different people. Some people are inspired by listening to a podcast. Some people are inspired by a John Danaher instructional. Some people watch a John Danaher instructional, exactly, and they fall asleep and they're like, I can't do this. This isn't how I learn. Don't get frustrated by it. It is just specifically how you learn. It's not a big deal if you don't learn the same way everyone else does. Find what inspires you. For me personally, I only watch live competition. I watch no instructionals ever anymore. That's not true. I did watch Jake Luigi did send me his new instructional because they put designated winner stuff in it. Yeah. So of course, if you put designated winner in an instruction, I'll watch that, right? Of course. But most of the time I really don't watch instructionals. But that's just my preference. I don't learn. My dad, we came up together. He's watched every instructional that there has ever been put out by anybody. He's just an instruction. You walk into his house, he's got a jiu-jitsu dummy laying in his living room and an instructional on the TV. And it's like, okay, that's how he learns, right? And so don't get closed off. Don't believe in the absolutes. Just get inspired, keep learning. And then the most important thing is be consistent, because if you are not, you'll never get good at jiu-jitsu.
Perfect, man. Josh, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show today, giving us your time, man. It was a phenomenal conversation. I can't wait to put out all of your hot takes on social media so people can no, just kidding. So, no, for real, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This was an absolute blast of a conversation. The time flew by.
It really did.
Yeah, so thank you so much. John, you got anything else?
No, man. Thank you a lot.
Oh, if people want to follow you or check out your stuff, where can they find you at?
So my Instagram is the Josh McKinney. But the main place to consistently hear about what I'm doing is my show, my podcast, the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. If anybody ever has a question, I don't recommend messaging me on Instagram because I'll probably never respond to it. If you email me, josh@simplifyingjujitsu.com. I know it's, very 2005 of me to say that, but it's also because maybe that was a simpler time when we didn't have Instagram and everyone had that ability to just reach you immediately, right?
Right.
But those, my main things are going to be, the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show. We post every Thursday. And then if you ever want to contact me, my email. And then if you ever want to train with me, if you're ever in the St. Louis area, come train with us at Headnod HQ. And so, yeah, I think those are all my handles and stuff.
Perfect, man. Thank you again. And thank you, everyone, for listening and watching at home. And remember, no oil checks here.
Yes.
All right, guys. Thanks. Peace.